Qualified hypnotherapist and an NLP master practitioner. Let's talk about the hypnotherapy side of things first. What exactly is hypnotherapy and how does it work?
Hypnotherapy has been around since the beginning of time, although it's only since about the late 1800s it was given a name. It's just an altered state of consciousness. You know, sometimes when you're driving home after your time here, it's a nice sunny day and you find yourself thinking about, was that my last turn off? Did I miss the lights? How did I get here? You've entered an altered state of consciousness. It doesn't mean you're asleep, you just enter a different state of mind. Sometimes when you're lying in bed, look as if you're asleep, you're thinking about what you've done today and going to do tomorrow. These are all examples where we do it naturally. All a hypnotherapist does really is help people to enter that state at a specific time so that you can use it for a practical purpose. And what it really does is that it bridges the gap between the conscious and the subconscious mind, which allows the therapist to give new suggestions for well-being to the inner part of the mind.
So who do you think can benefit from that type of treatment?
Well, I don't think of it as treatment so much. I think it's something that benefits everybody. We buy a new computer or a video recorder or a DVD recorder and we read the instructions. We get a nice manual with it so we understand it. And yet on our shoulders we've got a massively powerful computer that didn't come with a manual. And worse, we've got our mother and father to help us program it. So it's hardly surprising that sometimes we get it wrong, or we've got an idea in our head that stops us doing things. I mean, how many people don't take the pleasure of a flight for a holiday because they're afraid of flying, or won't go out in the garden in the summer because of bees and wasps?
So it's a method of challenging your own preconceived ideas.
We're not born with any of these things. We're programmed along the way, and sometimes the programs are very useful. For instance, a fear of height would stop us walking along the ridge of the roof of the house, which is probably a good idea. But some of them are not useful, and hypnosis helps us to change things in the way that we think and for our well-being. I always tell people my job is to help them to change their minds.
Nicely put.
Thank you.
When I think about hypnosis, though, I often think about, stage hypnotists and people being in a trance and kind of running about the stage, acting like chickens. Is it really like that? Can you achieve that through hypnosis?
Stage hypnosis is different from hypnotherapy or therapeutic forms of hypnosis. But yeah, the stage hypnotist is real, and many hypnotherapists are critical of them. But in fact, a lot of modern day hypnotherapists are due a lot of credit to the stage hypnotists, because the stage hypnotists have kept hypnosis going at times when it was less popular. In fact, not a lot of people know, but during the First World War, the British Army recruited stage hypnotists to send out to the front line because they could hypnotise soldiers who were suffering from what would now be called post-traumatic stress disorder, but in those days was called shell shock, because they couldn't get medication out there and insufficient medics. So the stage hypnotists are not the baddies. If it's done properly, it's good, honest entertainment, and it also shows that your mind has got unlimited potential. Although I'm not too keen on chickens.
We originally got in touch, David, because you were involved in the Stoptober campaign, which was aiming to help people stop smoking. In some cases through hypnotherapy. What success rate does hypnotherapy have in altering people's lifestyles and habits, whether it be smoking or anything else?
I, of course, would give you tremendous statistics, but if I refer you to research carried out by which magazine 2 or 3 years ago. They followed research that was carried out in America, which showed that by far the most successful way of stopping smoking was with hypnotherapy. All the methods that are available through the NHS, nicotine replacement and counselling, and some of the tablets that they now produce, all have short-term benefits, but the percentage of longer-term success is quite low. Which magazine came up with a figure of straightforward hypnosis being about 60% successful in one session. And if you add in the other technique that you mentioned, NLP or neuro-linguistic programming, you can take that up to about 80% in one session.
What should people expect if they come along to one of your hypnotherapy sessions?
I think that when people come along to meet a hypnotherapist at first, they're very often apprehensive. Well, anything from apprehensive to scared witless, because they've no idea what's going to happen. But then when I come into the hospital, I don't know what's going to happen, so I get a little apprehensive as well. We spend time discussing what the habit is, whether it's about eating or smoking or nail biting or whatever the issue might be, and we look at what I can offer in the way of help, and then we explain what hypnosis is. And people are usually maybe a little surprised or even sometimes disappointed that they're not going to be zapped out, switched off, or sent to Planet Zog. In fact, they're going to hear me all the time. They're going to feel very comfortable, and it's quite relaxing. It's non-threatening, and they still know who they are. I often get people saying, oh, I'm frightened, I'm going to get stuck in hypnosis. I wait for that to happen, because there is a university in America offering $5 million to anyone who can get stuck in hypnosis, and I would quite happily fly them to America and split the money. But it just can't happen. It's using the power of people's own mind, and therefore it's never going to do them any harm. You can't come to any harm in hypnosis.
So there are no side effects then?
Only positive ones.
Radio West 5.
Thursday afternoon on Radio West 5. David Fortune with you through until 3 o'clock today, and I'm joined in the studio by David Taylor. We're talking about hypnotherapy and NLP, which I believe you mentioned earlier means neuro-linguistic programming.
That's right.
Can you tell us how that works?
If you think of your brain as just being a biochemical computer, I don't know about you, David, but I occasionally make mistakes on my computer on my desk.
Frequently.
And I press the wrong button. Now, it doesn't mean it's a bad computer, and it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just creates a glitch in the computer. And if we know someone who knows more about computers than I do, they come along, press a couple of buttons, they go into the programming, find out where the error is, and they delete something or add something to it, and then press the return button, and my computer works properly again. And that's really kind of what NLP is about. It's about the programming of our mind. And the nice thing is, people bring me problems, I don't have to know what they are. I have to know how the problem is running, like a program that's running wrongly or badly on the computer. I don't have to know about where it came from, how it started, go back dragging people through their history. It's how they run the program in their mind. And with a few changes, we can change the problem. I mean, a perfect example, I think, is phobias. We're not born with phobias, we learn them. It's a program that we learn along the way, and at the time that we start the phobia, it might be the right thing to do. But then we run it all the time. Instead of evaluating each situation, our brain thinks it's doing the right thing. Now, you can go through a lot of therapy to try and get rid of a phobia. I look at it as a reprogramming problem. It takes about one session. I very rarely have to do more than one appointment to remove a phobia, but I don't see it as being a psychological problem. I see it as like a computer problem. Go in, find the glitch, change it, come out smiling.
So what are the benefits of NLP and hypnotherapy as opposed to using traditional medicine to deal with issues and problems?
Well, I never poo-poo traditional medicine, because when I'm not well and I have things wrong with me, there are things that hypnosis and NLP can't help, and I'm as quick as anybody else to go and see the doctor. And I prefer to see doctors as being friends rather than competition. But I get quite a lot of work referred to me by the doctors, because I can spend a little bit more time with my clients than the doctor can spend with them as patients. And the techniques I've got are allowing us to sort things out in our own mind. There's a lot of things where the doctor can prescribe medication. If they had more time, most doctors would be happy to spend time working in the kind of way that I do. That I'm absolutely sure about. But they're very limited. So I see myself as an adjunct to conventional medicine, as opposed to a competitor or working against each other.
I see from your website, I was having a wee look earlier on, that you offer various different programs for things such as stress management, for example.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about these courses?
Well, I do two things. I work with people to make change. So I get people, if you take the stress example, I get people who come along who are suffering from stress, maybe on long-term sick leave with stress. It's one of the biggest reasons for people being off work. In fact, I read an article recently that even the NHS are now saying that although they may not be prescribed as stress, that over 80% of prescribed illnesses at the moment are stress related. And I think with the current economic environment, we're all suffering a bit more stress. I know every time I put fuel in my car, my stress level goes up. But I also train therapists, so I work with people who are suffering from stress, but I also train people who want to be stress management consultants, and either as part of their own business or in-house stress experts for businesses and companies. I also train hypnotherapists and NLP practitioners for some of the major organisations for therapists. So I kind of do the two things at the same time.
You've told us a fair bit about hypnotherapy and NLP. How did you personally get involved in working in these fields?
I saw a stage hypnotist when I was 17. And I think it's long enough ago now that the police won't come after me. I had 3 pints of lager, or maybe 2 pints of lager, before going to the Whitehall Theatre in Dundee. And I saw a stage hypnotist, which I thought was really funny. The next day, however, I thought, oh, I don't ever want to meet one of these weird hypnotists who can make you do things against your will. So my interest really came from trying to find out to make sure no one would ever do it to me. And I read books and articles, but it didn't make any sense. And then about 25 years ago now, I saw a course advertised at Glasgow University, and I went along with my mind made up that I was going to understand hypnosis, but no one was going to do it to me. And by the end of the first day, I'd been in hypnosis 9 times. I discovered it was nothing like it I thought it was, and it was the most enjoyable experience. In fact, I start every day with still doing some self-hypnosis, and that means my mind is clear, I'm refreshed, ready to do my day's work, and at the end of the day, I do a little bit of self-hypnosis so that I switch off, and when I return home, I'm not carrying all the stories that I've heard around during the day.
Yeah, it makes a bit of sense. So you produce a range of self-help CDs as well. Do they work in a similar fashion?
Originally, when I started as a hypnotherapist, there weren't many hypnotherapists around in Scotland, and they seemed to see people for an awful lot of appointments. And one of the keys to hypnosis is repetition. So I started producing tapes in those days so that people could do a lot of the repetition in their own time at home, rather than having to keep coming to me all the time. So it speeded up the process and it reinforced the work I was doing. From there we moved on to CDs as the technology changed. Some I do sell from my website, and some I give away after therapy sessions to reinforce the work that we've done. And they are beneficial. I always say the best way is to meet with the therapist first, because then there's a seed planted about how effective the CD is going to be. But they do work on their own.
So what is your website so people can have a look at what you offer?
It's power, Power, 2 change, change.co.uk. And I used that name originally for a course that I wrote. It was a personal development course, because I do believe if we should all be happy, or as happy as we can be, and we all have the ability to change. There's very little in our life that we can't change if we're given the opportunity. It's down to our belief in ourselves and working with our mind. And I liked the name so much, and so many people mentioned it, I decided to call my business Power to Change. And that's all I do, help people to recognise they've got the power to change.
Why do you think NLP is so effective?
Because it's very quick and it's very painless. If you think of somebody who's got, let's just say, a traumatic event in their past, conventionally the techniques that are around would involve going back and reliving that experience. Now, we're in Dunfermline, and if I was to want to drive to Aberdeen today, and I saw a sign that said Inverness 15 miles, I know I'm on the wrong road. I don't, however, have to come all the way back to Dunfermline to get on the right road. I would just look at where am I now, how do I get from here to my destination. And in NLP, that's how I work with people. Not to go back to what was the reason for this, or how did this happen, what was the cause of it. It's where are you now, and what do you need to do to get from where you are now to where you want to be.
So a practical, relevant approach.
It's practical, and it's fast, and it's effective.
David Taylor, thanks for coming along to Radio West 5 today.
It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.